A lot of people have this idea, right? A lot of people want to make a difference in the world. That difference starts inside, right? Like everything that you do in the outer world is a reflection of your inner world, right? If you cannot manage your mind and your emotions, find a nice quiet place and go inward, right? Find that space, find that peace within, because inner peace doesn't come from anywhere else. It's inside you, and you just have to connect to it.
Today's guest is my dear friend, Parm Saggu, a spiritual life coach for millennials and the owner and founder of Parm's Yoga. Her journey took her from feeling lost, stuck, and alone in life to finding her purpose and giving back to the world in a way that resonates with her. A few years ago, she worked as a nanotechnician engineer and surrendered all of that to the intense pull she felt to make a bigger impact on the world. Now Parm mentors first and second generation immigrants who long for a deeper meaning in life but feel caged by societal expectations to break free, uncover the secret of life, and forge a path to be the difference they want to see in the world. Welcome, Parm.
Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
What's one of the most courageous things you have done?
That's a great question. The first two things that come to mind, I know you asked for one, but two things come to mind. The first is buying a one-way ticket to South America and just going with no plan whatsoever, just kind of hoping for the best and going. And the second, which might be more so, is quitting my 9 to 5. When I quit my 9 to 5, it wasn't just quitting the 9 to 5, right? It wasn't just quitting that job and going to look for another one. It was really quitting that way of life. And so that was terrifying, but I did it anyways.
That's excellent, because I can't imagine just buying a one-way ticket to South America and quitting your job too. That's very courageous, I must say. So what inspired you to make the change from a nanotechnician to yoga?
It seems quite far apart, right? These two things. But
definitely.
when I was working in that 9 to 5 job, like that was after I had come back from South America, and I thought, okay, well, I still don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Let me just try to fill this mold that society has told me I'm supposed to fill. And so I went and I found this job that I thought I could be happy in and where I thought I would be making a difference in the world. And, 6 months in, it was like this intense conflict inside me. I couldn't take it anymore. It felt like a box was closing in on me and I had to make a change. And for me, it was, okay, it's now or never. Like either I get stuck here in this system that, makes me miserable, or I make a change right now. And my experience in South America had taught me that, not having a plan can sometimes be the best plan. And sometimes, having that empty space really opens up a world of opportunity, right? Literally, right? Think about it. Like if you go in with a set mindset, like I'm going to this beach and I'm not going anywhere else, like you miss everything that is potentially on the way to that beach, right? So I ended up quitting, and the transition to yoga was seamless. It was absolutely seamless. Yoga had been a practice that had really followed me throughout my journey. And when I quit, I committed to practicing yoga every day, because that was the one thing in my life that made me feel like, the world wasn't crumbling around me in flames. Like it made me feel like I was okay, like things were going to be okay. And, that commitment, that one thing that I told myself, like, okay, I'm going to practice this every single day. That's what made the difference for me.
And I can totally understand that, because we need something that can ground us. Otherwise, we get caught up in our mindset, and that's not a great place to be in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I started practicing, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just knew that, this practice makes me feel at ease. And that was enough for me.
Yes, I can imagine. And now you're actually going on to teach others, which is excellent. So, what took you on your journey of mentoring first and second generation immigrants? How did that come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, being a second generation immigrant myself, I understand the struggle, right? Like I understand being caught between two worlds. Like my parents are from India, I'm sure you can tell. And I was born in Canada. And so I always grew up with these two conflicting sets of values. I remember feeling my whole life like, okay, I don't know where I belong. Like I'm not
Mm,
100% this and I'm not 100% that. And that led me to feel alone my entire life, Like I connected with the kids who were in the same boat as me, but outside of that little pocket, I felt like like I was nobody because I wasn't here, I wasn't there.
mm.
Where was I? I was nowhere. Feeling that struggle and understanding what it feels like I know that there are people out there who feel this way, and I know that I can help them, I can help them feel like they do belong everywhere, not just here and not just there, but everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. And I can absolutely understand your struggle because it's the same for me here too. I'm second generation Indian. And yes, believe you me, I never knew where I fitted in either. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of expectations and they've got to be dropped. It's not like in the perhaps I refer it to the olden days, my parents' generation, where people are kind of seem to have arranged marriages. You get a job, 2.4 children. That's all going out the window for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a tough transition, right? Because the parents or the older generation are not going to understand. And so it's really that battle for independence, right? Of breaking free from that societal expectation.
Sometimes we wear so many masks to protect ourselves and we get lost in that. And that's where the danger comes in. You get lost in your identity. You don't even know where you are these days or where you are anymore. And that's where people can get really unhappy, depressed. And that is a case of where people like you, I'm sure, can help and I can help. It's a case of understanding where we belong. And sometimes, it may not be in the situation where we think it is. We need to look a further afield.
The problem with wearing all these masks is that they limit us, right? Just coming back to the previous example of, thinking I'm going to the beach, period. Like you miss
Hmm.
all of the other possibilities and opportunities. And we wear these masks that we think that we have to, or that we wear them defensively, right? So that nobody can really say anything to us. But it's like we're missing out on so much of what life has to offer.
For sure. And you work with clients that want to forge a new, different path in the world we want to see. So, where do you see the difference is really needed currently?
A lot of people have this idea, right? A lot of people want to make a difference in the world. That difference starts inside, right? Like everything that you
Hmm.
do in the outer world is a reflection of your inner world, right? If you cannot manage your mind and your emotions, then there's no way that you can make a massive change in the world, right? Like you can't be this unstable person that is constantly in public eye, right? So the main
Absolutely.
thing where I start is that inner work, right? And it's not just mindset work, because I know there are a ton of mindset coaches out there, but with the practices that I teach and the things, the methodologies that I use, we really go deeper into that. And, not only do I work directly with the consciousness, like we do, right? We
Hmm.
go super, super deep to this idea of who we are, right? You just mentioned that people don't know who they are. And so I work directly with people's idea of who they are, and I help them see that they're so much more, they're so expansive that any label that they put on themselves is a limitation. Really, any label is a limitation.
Yes, I have to agree with you. And it is about breaking free. being comfortable in our own skin, who we are. And sometimes it is hard, don't get me wrong. I've been there, breaking out of that. And other people, like you say, the expectations, are we going to be still loved unconditionally or not? That's a big thing as well. People are scared, and I can totally understand why.
Absolutely. And I would even go on to say that even that is your own perception, right? Like if you think that someone is not going to love you if you do a certain thing, that is your perception. And this is something that I teach this is something I talk about all the time, is that if you can change that inner idea of, okay, no one's going to love me if I make this change, or if I do this, people are going to judge me, or I'm going to fail, or, I can't do that, I'm not the right person, whatever it may be. If you shift that a little bit, like, you start to see that there's really no malice in the world. People's responses to us are colored by our own lenses. You see what I'm saying here? So like,
Absolutely.
yeah, like we can perceive someone to be super negative toward us when they just made a comment, right? Like I'm sure everyone has experienced this. You make a comment and you get like a disproportionate response. Someone just loses it, and it's like, but I didn't even say anything that warranted that response. And what it is their own mind, right? There's something in their mind telling them that everyone is against them, that, no one supports them, and no one loves them, and all of these things, right? So you see that it creates kind of like an illusion.
Yes, definitely. And the thing is, it's always about working on the inside out. If you truly can start working from the inside out, the outside will not affect you. I mean, there may be times when obviously everybody does get unsettled and unbalanced, and you need to ground yourself. But it's a case of understanding it's your perception of what someone says. It's how you resonate with what they are saying. It's how you actually respond to that comment as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me more about the yoga practice you teach and the consciousness, because they're two very different things. Because I know some people, they go to a yoga studio and do all the different poses, but what you're saying is about the conscious mind as well. So tell me more about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's interesting because today in the market, yoga is seen as just this physical practice, right? Like you said, we go into studios, we stay there for an hour, we do this practice, and we come home feeling great, hopefully. But yoga is so much more than that, right? Yoga is this science of consciousness, right? Yoga, the word actually comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means union. And so this is a union between your body, your breath, and your mind. We talk a lot about this. For example, on Instagram, I have some blog posts about this, but there are many layers of yourself, right? You're not just your body. And this is a very common misconception, right? We believe that we're our bodies, and at the end we're buried and just like, that's it, right? Like that's the end. But that is very, very
Yes.
far from the truth, right? And science and the Vedas, right, the spiritual science will tell you the same thing, is that we are energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, right? Energy can only be transformed. And so at the end of our lives, in this example, right, your consciousness goes on, right? And so this is why some people can
Mm.
feel like old souls, right? It's because they've been here for a long
Mm.
time. They've been doing all the things, and they're tired of the same things over and over and over and over again, right? Like that's why those people, I know I was definitely one of them, can feel like, okay, I want more in life. What else is there, right? Like I've already done this. Like I don't want to do this again, right? So yoga is connecting with that deeper version of you, right? That consciousness that you are. So I'm just going to quickly run through these 7 layers just so you have
Yeah,
an idea.
definitely.
And so between you, like you, your body, and yourself, right, your consciousness and who you actually are, there are 7 layers, right? So there's 7 layers in total. So if you say that the surface of the ocean over here is the body, and then down here is the self, and you can see my hand, yeah, you can see it, okay. So in between, we have all these layers, right? So the body, there's the breath or the life force energy, right? This is if you've heard the term prana or ki or mana, they're all the same thing. This is your life force energy, okay? So that is carried on the breath. And then is the mind, the intellect, the memory, the ego, and the self. Yeah. So all of these layers are influenced by the layers around them. And this is, before I get to that, and the self, the seventh layer, is untouched by everything, right? So this is who you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is that timeless, that nameless, beginningless, endless, infinite self. And this is you at your core, right? So the self can't be experienced via the five senses because the five senses are up here. But the self
Mm-hmm.
can be experienced in other ways, right? So via meditation, or even, maybe you felt this, that, you feel like you don't age, right? You see that your body ages, and you see the kids around you turn from babies into full
Mm-hmm.
grown adults, and you're just like, damn, they grew fast, right? And you feel like you haven't aged at all, right? This is an example of the self, right? The self is timeless. The self does not age. And so it's all of these layers in between that keep us from this higher version of us, right? We've heard the term, I'm sure you've heard, higher self or authentic self or
Yes.
highest version of me, right? These are all referring to the self. And to get back to the self, all of these other layers need to come into union. And that's what yoga is, right? Yoga is that union. Yoga is
Mm.
kind of like clearing that tunnel, just like, was it Moses? He just like parted the Red Sea. And so that's what you want to do, right? You want to bring everything into union so that that self has a clear path to shine through. Okay. And yoga postures are a very, very small aspect of the practice of yoga.
Okay.
If you dive into the philosophy, like, you'll see it
Mm-hmm.
is this entire lifestyle, right? Right down from
Yes.
like how to clean yourself, to how to eat, to how to treat people around you, to, how to meditate, and even how to reach higher states of consciousness and do all of those things, right? Yoga is inner work, and it's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So tried and tested, check, okay, it definitely works. And if you need
Yes.
proof, like my life is a perfect example, send me a message. I'll be happy to share more. It works.
That's excellent. So what resources do you recommend, daily tips, tools, to anyone that wants to start breaking free from societal expectations?
The very, very first thing that I would tell anyone in that situation is to realize that it's your own mind, right? Yes, the world is a certain way, but your perception of it is what keeps you stuck, right? Even the scriptures will tell us that you are free now, right? It's just the mind
Mm-hmm.
creating concepts that keeps you stuck. And, things like affirmations are very surface level. Like, you want to work down at the ego, right? The ego is right before the self. And this is
Definitely.
your ideas about yourself are what filter up through these layers and really define your actions up in the body level, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do is start to cultivate a practice, right? Start to become aware of what is affecting you, what takes you down these spirals, what bothers you, start to
Mm-hmm.
make these little changes. A daily practice is something that I absolutely recommend. I know it can be hard in the beginning, like really thinking about committing to something every single day, but try it, right? So in every single morning, I spend a couple hours in my practice, right? Because I need my mind to be in a place where I can do the things I want to do every single day. But for someone starting out, like 10-20 minutes, it's fine, right? And
Yes.
you can do guided meditations are really good to
Mm-hmm.
start. I know if anyone has tried meditating, in the beginning, it's really difficult, right? The mind is very, very unsettled, but that's normal, right? If you've never
Chatting
meditated.
a lot of chatter goes on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? It's completely normal. In the beginning, it's like that, right? We've never observed our mind before. And when you start to observe it, you're like, oh my goodness, is this what I'm living with all the time? The more that you observe it, the more that you start to let go of these things, the quieter and quieter it will become. So definitely commit to a daily practice, some sort of daily practice, whether that's 5 minutes of breath work or a guided meditation or, something where you can connect with yourself. You can even start with journaling, right? Journaling is a way to
Mm-hmm.
really empty your mind.
Definitely. I love journaling. I absolutely practice that, and I have done for several years.
I actually started my journey with journaling. Journaling was interesting in the beginning. In the beginning, it was kind of like, what am I doing? I'm just writing about my day. But the more time that you spend doing this, the more that you'll see that you'll get deeper and deeper, right? Certain things will come
Mm.
out that you had no idea needed to come out, or you had no idea you were thinking these thoughts, or you'll just be sitting there one day and your hand will be moving on its own and things will come out and you'll just be like, whoa, where is this coming from? But afterwards you'll feel so much freer, right? So this is really the power of journaling. And this is kind of the secret. The secret in
Yeah.
plain sight is that you have these layers, coming back to the model that we talked about. You have these layers, and the only way to empty out these layers is to bring everything up to the surface and let it out, right? And so journaling, you're letting it out like this, right? Through your hands. By
Love
meditating,
it.
you let it out in a different way. Breath work, you let it out through your breath. And when you practice yoga, it's through your body and body movements, right? And so there is a very deep science behind all of the things in this practice. Like nothing is random. Absolutely nothing is random. And just the more that you do practice, the more that you learn, you'll start to see this, right? You'll start to get your answers. I remember when I started, I had so many questions just about existence and like, why am I here? And, I had all these existential questions. Like, what am I meant to do? What is my purpose?
Mm.
What am I here for? And through this practice, I started to slowly get my answers, but it requires commitment. Okay. You have to practice and you have to keep
Absolutely.
going, especially when you don't want to, right? This is when it's most powerful, that you kind of push through that.
So where can the listeners find you online? What's your website?
So listeners can find me at parmsyoga.com. So that's PARMS yoga.com. And I'm also on Instagram. So if you go there, you'll find a link to all my socials. But on Instagram, my handle is the same, at Parms Yoga.
Yes, and I'll put your social media links and the website in the show notes so people can see.
Perfect. And actually, I'd love to share one more thing. I know that I recommended people to practice daily, and this can be a little bit daunting, but I do have a free resource that people can use to help them kind of build that practice. So I have a free 30-minute yoga class. So it starts with breath work. There's a little bit of postures, and then there's the meditation at the end. And so to really demonstrate the power of yoga, to really demonstrate the strength of this practice to bring your mind to stillness, this is something that I definitely recommend. So it's pre-recorded. You can do it whenever you have 30 minutes. Just open it up, find a nice quiet place, and go inward, right? Find that space, find that peace within, because inner peace doesn't come from anywhere else. It's inside you, and you just have to connect to it.
That's fantastic. And thank you for sharing that with all the listeners. My final question is, what's your definition of courage? Because we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. So what is your definition of courage?
I would say that courage is doing something even if you are absolutely terrified of that thing. And I'm sure that this is a very common definition, but it's so normal to be afraid.
Mm.
Like, it's so normal to be afraid of things that you might even think are unreasonable to be afraid of. But for some reason, there's something inside you that is resisting, right? Whether it's doing that program or showing up on social media or talking to someone about something, or, taking that scary step. Know that that fear is coming from a place inside you that doesn't serve you anymore, right? Like, if a fear is actually, if something is actually threatening your life, like, that, okay? Like, that's not the
Yes.
fear that you want to avoid. But if it's a fear of like talking to someone, or a fear of enrolling in a program, or a fear of, taking a day off, like, this is a fear coming from one of those masks or one of those labels that doesn't serve you. And so you need to step through it, right? You need to step through it. And that takes courage, right? Because you're going against your own mind. You're actively transforming yourself. Let's be real. That's what you're doing. And so that takes courage. And if you are able to do that, you are courageous. You are one of the most courageous people out there, because a lot of people don't.